Alright, so I wanted to make a quick review of the Tom Anderson Pro AM. This is a traditional 25.5 inch. And it's got the 3 pickups, the Switcheroo system here. This is the Arctic White finish. Got the little Steve Vai positive grid practice amp. So I wanted to get my thoughts on this guitar. Um, kind of compare it to the Sur and the other guitars that I've had on the channel. There's not a lot of reviews on these babies out there. I don't know why. It's just hard to get Tom Anderson reviews. But, my thoughts on this guitar is that I like it a lot. The one gripe I guess I have is, well, let me name a few observations I've made. You cannot get mother of pearl dot inlays. I think they only make them with block inlays. You can get pearl. So that's not an option. And if I was going to spec one, I kind of would prefer that, but that is not an option. 12 to 14 inch radius, which I do quite like, being a Les Paul player primarily and coming over. I like the 12 to 14. I know that Sur does 10 to 14 typically, like by default. And then the other thing here is this actually has the Purple Heart. So not a lot of information online about that, but I took a chance when I bought this. I bought this from a dealer new. I did not spec it. But the Purple Heart, which I guess is black heart that's been roasted or cooked, it basically looks black. I suppose if it's not pure black, there might be the tiniest bit of purple hue to it, but it essentially looks black. And I would describe this as being between rosewood and ebony. I really like it. If I was going to get another Tom Anderson, I would spec it with this. I think this is $100 extra. It's not quite as slick as ebony, but it is uniformly dark. One of the things I've noticed with the ebony, even on like a Sur, is it can look kind of streaky, and I hate that. This is solid black, very uniform. With the ebony, sometimes you can see through it to light colored wood, and I've never liked that. It also is not as grippy as rosewood, so I would just describe it as in between rosewood and ebony. I don't think about it when I'm playing. It doesn't feel too slick. It doesn't feel slow. It doesn't feel too hard like maple. It just feels just right to me. It's not oily like rosewood. One thing that I've noticed with these rosewood guitars that are made currently, I have a Epiphone Les Paul from like the early 2000s, and then I've got the Hammer Phantom that I showed you from 1986. The rosewood on that Epiphone and the Hammer Phantom feel much better and just look much better. The rosewood on, I think the Charvel that I had on the channel and the PRS SE, it's very dry. It's not as attractive looking. On that Charvel, that was a tacky, slow feeling neck. And that is not the rosewood that I like and that I'm used to. So I would say that if you're unsure about this, because this is a common wood that they use, this black heart, if you like rosewood and you like ebony, I don't think you're going to be disappointed. Is it as slick as ebony? No. But based on the current rosewood out there, and I've never played a Sur or a Tom Anderson with their rosewood supply, with wherever they source it, it's somewhere in between. I like it a lot. It's uniformly dark. It feels good. It doesn't feel slow. The other thing I noticed with Tom Anderson's, I've played two, and even among the Surs, is these are jumbo frets. So this is the is it 0.057 by 110. Compared to Sur, these feel not quite as tall. And even on some of the Sur guitars, I've noticed there is a difference between jumbo frets. Even if they're spec the same, sometimes they're crowned a little more aggressively. This is not low by any means, but I have played Sur guitars where they do feel a bit bigger. It does have almost a scalloped feel, where especially up top, when you're doing these types of runs, where it almost feels like the frets are massive. This does not have that, but it's fine. They're definitely jumbo. The only other criticism I would have is this neck joint is very nice. It's cool. It's rounded over. It's comfortable, but it's definitely not an all-access, shreddy, super easy to play. There's still a good amount of mass there, and I'm kind of getting used to it, but it's definitely noticeable. I mean, it could be better. That is one criticism. So this is not a guitar where if I was going to be playing up here a ton, or if the stuff up here was really fast and hard to play, as much as I love this guitar, it's really not the best for that. And that's a little bit of a disappointment. The next big awesome feature about this guitar, and you might not have read this anywhere or thought about it, is the paint on this is considerably smoother, glassier, and nicer than any other guitar I've played, including all the Surs that I've featured. This is a very glassy, glossy, smooth finish that does not seem to attract as much sweat and grime. Even up here where I'm resting, my forearm, yeah, it's a little bit grimy. I need to clean it, but much, much, much better than any guitar, including Sur and some of the other premium guitars that I've had. It's noticeably smoother. I know they use supposedly a special UV light to help cure it. I don't know if that's the trick to it, but it is definitely a noticeable upgrade. I really like it. Kind of hard to play anything else, to be honest, once you feel how smooth this is. And then I'll comment on the Switcheroo system here. I really like this too. If it were my choice, I'd probably get a humbucker up here. I prefer a neck humbucker. But this is very intuitive. It's very easy to use. The middle position turns the pickups off. This is a blower switch, or kind of like an override. If this is off, push it down, it turns this on. I do think, like, if this is switched on to series, the bridge pickup, there seems to be a very, very small difference between running this in series, basically a normal humbucker, versus turning that on. This seems like it puts out just a tiny bit more output. But I love it. I love mixing and matching the pickups, parallel, series, which pickups are on. I'm still not positive the difference between a single coil being run in series or parallel or split, because it's already a single coil, but it does sound a little bit different. And speaking of these pickups, these are definitely different than like the Sur guitars. This is an H3. I think this is an SA2 and then an SA2R for reverse wound. These are definitely high output and a full frequency. These are very punchy and clear, very dynamic. You may love that, you may hate it. I quite like them, but I could see in some situations where they almost sound like somewhere in an EMG territory. Not quite though, um, but I like them a lot. This does have the, what is it called? The Buzz Fenton tuning system. Obviously, it has a locking nut, it has a Floyd Rose, but it definitely does sound like it's in tune better, and it rarely goes out of tune, if at all. Um, so I think I noticed the difference with that of all the guitars that I've played. It definitely sounds more in tune, more musical. So that's my review. If you got any questions, leave a comment. Again, it's hard to find reviews on these guitars. Um, so if you're wondering about the Blackheart, I'd say go for it. If you're wondering about the paint job, to me, it feels like a noticeable upgrade. I really like it. The neck joint is nice, you know, the two bolts, but as you can see, it's still pretty blocky. So this is not shredder friendly. I mean, you can struggle and get up here, but it's going to be work, you know, pretty typical for a Super Strat that doesn't have like a big cutaway there. Uh, Again, the jumbo frets, not the biggest, but they are jumbo. They're just not huge feeling. Can't complain about that though. Locking tuners. I guess before I forget this, I don't have it with me, but this came with the standard bag, which is included in the price of the guitar when you spec out on their website, versus Sur, which I think gives you a nicer gig bag, but it's an extra. They force you to buy it. It's $250. I think if you want to upgrade from the standard gig bag on this, it's like an extra $150 for the nicer plush gig bag, which I have had for another guitar. It's definitely nicer. I do think it's a little weird for such a nice guitar as Tom Anderson is, and for the price point where these basically start at $4,000 as a minimum and then go up $5,000-6,000. The basic gig bag kind of seems cheap, and I can appreciate that they want to give people an option, and maybe if you're going to just use your own case, don't charge people for it. Granted, upgrading is only $150, but I would say that if you don't plan on getting like a hard shell case, it's a little weird putting it in that gig bag that's kind of cheap. That's my only criticism. I think it's a little strange to have a $4,000 to $6,000 guitar being shipped stock with a pretty cheap feeling flimsy gig bag. But that's pretty much my review. Rock on.